Hello Jolo fans. Today we're going to be making my mother's famous meatloaf recipe. So based on the demands of our wine club members and frequent guests, they've all been clamoring for the recipe for this meatloaf. So we're going to assemble it here for you today, and hopefully you can enjoy a beautiful meatloaf dinner. They also make great hamburgers for the grill, just something to consider. So we're going to walk you through the assembly here. It's actually pretty healthy. So this is 80-20 beef. I like to use one that has a little bit of fat. So a lot of it will render out anyway and come out of the pan, which we'll show you in the cooking process. But the flavor is imparted all the way through as it leaves. But we're going to add 2 eggs per pound. So assuming you at home are going to make maybe 2 or 3 pounds, you'd probably use just around 6 eggs. So it's really to taste, but the main ingredients are Worcestershire sauce. So we add that in here. That's about 1.5 cups for 10 pounds of beef. And this is about 1 cup of barbecue sauce. So I like to use Sweet Baby Ray's. I think it's really, really delicious. It's really well balanced. Regular Heinz ketchup, about 1.5 cups of Heinz ketchup, and about 1 cup of mustard, just regular yellow mustard. And then for some secret ingredients, here we have some shredded cheddar. And if you can get your hands on it, some smoked Gouda. So that's what we have, half smoked Gouda and half cheddar. And Parmesan. So you can use Parmesan. Do not use the stuff in the green can. It's got wood chips. Get the real Parmesan. If you can grate it at home, even better. Then we're going to add some onion powder and some garlic powder. So all that to taste. And of course, there's not much salt, but all the ingredients like the Worcestershire sauce, the ketchup, the mustard, the barbecue is somewhat salty. So go liberally, don't go liberally. Just a few dashes of salt, and of course pepper, a few dashes of pepper. And what we like to do here, we'll always make a small little patty on the stove and just saute it to eat it, to try it, to make sure the seasonings are right on before you make a huge batch of it and pop it in the oven, because then there's no turning back. So we'll come back and show you how to get all this together. All right, so here we have all the ingredients with the exception of a couple. So what we're going to do is, you can see it's a little soupy, and it's going to get soupy, and the only way to really do it is get in with your hands. But we saute and caramelize some red onion first. I like to use red onion versus the white onion. I think the flavor is a little bit more deep, and also it's higher in health factor. It's got more quercetin, which is an antioxidant, really powerful one. It's in grapes, it's in red onions, blueberries, and then we're going to add a little bit of panko breadcrumb as we go. We just add a little bit of breadcrumb to go as it's needed. So there's no real secret for how much to add. You just want to get all this really mixed in well and incorporated. I'm going to get rid of ditch the spoon. Back to that later. You want to get it all super mixed in. Squeeze it so all the ingredients get really incorporated. And then we'll add a little bit of the panko as we go. We'll come back and show you that here in a moment. Okay, everything's all mixed up here in the meatloaf. You can see it's still a little loose. So the eggs will help bind, obviously, as they cook. We're going to add just a little bit of panko breadcrumb. Just enough. That's very little for 10 pounds. So we don't need a whole heck of a lot. Just enough to absorb some of that excess fluid and make it more formable. So I already have a little pan going, so I'm just going to take a little bit of this mix. You don't need a lot, just a little bit, like a bite. Make a little patty so it cooks super fast. And right in the pan. So we're going to get that cooked up right there, taste it, and see if it needs any more seasoning. And then what you do, I think this needs a little bit more. I'm going to put the rest of this in. And that looks to me like that'll be a beautiful meatloaf, perfectly formed in the pan. So what we do is, you can do it at home, and we'll show you how to make the glaze, which keeps it all together. So you take it, just form a nice little meatloaf. It looks like a loaf of bread, like that. It's an old Italian secret my mother taught me with making meatballs. So to keep the meatballs from cracking, you put a little coat of water. So you take your hands under the water, get water on your hands and you make the meatball like this, and the meatball never cracks and splits with the water coating. So we use the same philosophy for the glaze that ends up being the sauce when it's finished. So nice parchment paper prevents the crust on the bottom and burning and sticking to the pan. So you get a beautiful loaf. So all the pieces are about the same size. See that? Beautiful. And what we're going to do is show you how to make the glaze, and we'll get this in the oven. Okay, so now we're going to make the glaze that goes on top, which will also be the sauce. So it's a super simple sauce. I use Bud Light. You can use whatever beer you have. You get as fancy as you want. But it's basically a general mix. It's 1 can of beer, 1 cup of ketchup, and 1 cup of brown sugar. But we're doubling it. And then you'll just cook this down a little bit to get everything incorporated. You're not reducing it. You're just trying to get the sugar broken down on the stove. And then we'll ladle that glaze, 2 or 3 ladles, until this is covered in the glaze, and that'll help keep it from cracking and create a nice crusty shell on the outside. And then I like to do it this way. You can make it a day or 2 in advance. Things always taste better with all these ingredients. When it sits for a day or 2, especially chilled, it's like a marinade or like a ceviche, or when it sits, it does better. So then you slice it in slices like this, like we do with Jolo. And then we'll take this, we'll melt some butter in a pan, and each person gets a slice. So you heat it up that way. So you'll get a nice little crust with the butter in a saute pan, maybe a minute on the side, flip it for a minute, and pop it in the oven. So you can do it in a large pan. You can see how much this will fit for 4 or 5 or 6 people, super simple. And again, if you're gonna make a glorious, delicious hamburger, cheeseburger on the grill, make sure you spray some Pam or put some canola or vegetable oil all around the burger, because with the egg and the cheese, it'll definitely stick to the grill. So you wanna give it a nice coating of Pam all around the burger, or canola or vegetable oil. So we're gonna come back and show you how it's finished, and it's gonna be delicious. So here we have all the meatloaves ready to go. So this is the glaze. Again, it's ketchup, beer, and brown sugar, equal parts, 1 cup of each. I'm just gonna take it and just drizzle it over the top, like that. And then this will end up being your gravy for the meatloaf when it's cooked. So basically you used 1 bowl to mix everything. We had it in separate bowls just so we could show you, but at home, 1 bowl, parchment paper on this, so cleanup will be a breeze. Remove the parchment paper, you get an almost clean pan. And then the next day, like I said, you can have a little butter in the pan, and then you'll cut it in slices, or you can serve it right out of the oven like this, but this is how it's better. Like that, 1 minute, nice high heat, get a nice brown on it, because some of that gravy and the sugar, the caramelized onions, all that good stuff is in there. The cheese, so you get a nice little crust. We'll flip that and then pop it in the oven to make sure the center is cooked. When you're cooking this, you want to shoot for 165 degrees internal temperature. So when you take beef, when you grind it, that's when it becomes the most dangerous. You can eat raw meat, like steak tartare, but once you incorporate the outside of the beef into the inside and it sits, that's where disease can form and it becomes very dangerous. So 165 internal temperature for this, and then again, just like this, pan, 1 minute, flip it, and then you'll throw it right in the oven to get it warm. You can eat that cold if you want. So then, when that's finished, you take it out of the oven. In a larger pan, you'll have 4 or 5 pieces. I can fit 3 pieces in here. Put those on the plate. Just take this glaze in the same pan, so you get all that goodness. And that's what you use to go over the top of the meatloaf. Mashed potatoes, oven roasted potatoes, vegetables. This is just delightful on its own, or in a sandwich. So hopefully you enjoy this as much as my family has enjoyed it. This is my mother's meatloaf. Bon appetit.